Hello, and welcome to our discussion on county level strategies for supporting families. Let's take a look at our agenda for our discussion today. We're going to have two sections. So in the first section, we're going to be talking about family support on the ground and discuss some services and supports that are available at the county level across the state of California to give you some ideas of programs, strategies that can be implemented at the county level. And then we're pleased to be joined by several individuals that are providing that support on the county level and hear from both Riverside County and Alameda and some of the programming that they have to support families and how they are transitioning that support to support families going through care. Let's take a look at our learning objectives for today's discussion. The goal is that by the end of this training, you'll have a better ability to identify strategies and best practices for family support at the county level, and then also be able to consider ways in which current programming to support families can be transitioned to or adapted for care. So we have two presenters today, but also, like I mentioned, who will be joined by county participants that can speak to what this looks like on the ground. So today we have Barry Jacobs from Health Management Associates, who is a clinical psychologist and a family therapist, and also Suzanne Daub, also with HMA, who is a licensed clinical social worker and has over 30 years of experience, and also has done integrating physical health and behavioral health. So with that introduction, I'd love to turn the time over to Barry Jacobs, who will get us started.
Thank you so much, Patricia, and thank you all for joining us today. So we're going to just talk a little bit about county support of families writ large. And we're going to take a look at some survey results about some of the services that already exist within the state at the county level. It's a very nice and I think impressive set of services that many counties have put together. So why don't we take a look at the next slide, please, and talk a little bit about what has already been put in place prior to the advent of the CARE Act. And so the services fall into different buckets. So one of the main things that many counties within the state provide are education services, sometimes called training services. And this is to help families really understand the nature of schizophrenia, spectrum disorders, and other psychotic disorders, to understand the treatments, the availability of treatments, the treatments benefits, and also potentially their side effects, to understand how to interact in a more positive manner with their family member who may be a participant in the CARE Act. And these education services, as we'll see in a moment, are among the most popular family supports that are provided by counties. There are also a whole range of support services which counties provide. These include everything from support groups to referrals for individual and family therapy services, peer support services, which we're going to hear much more about in a few moments. And these support services too are extremely important for helping families navigate the system better. Speaking of navigating the system, a third bucket is care management, helping family members access benefits that are available to them, and also how to interact in a productive way with the mental health team, and as I mentioned, navigate what can be a very complicated and bewildering system for them. Some counties, but not all, do a certain amount of family caregiver assessment, and this is really to identify those families which may need a higher level support than others. And so, as we'll talk in a moment, assessment is done in two ways: one with structured interviews, and two by using some paper and pencil, or rather online assessment tool. And finally, in order to ensure high quality family supports, having some kind of outcome studies, and that would include family satisfaction surveys to see how families are benefiting from or their degree of satisfaction with the education support and care management, but also more quantitative studies having specific goals, metrics for instance, how engaged would family members be, how often do they interact with county behavioral health staff. Those are potential metrics for outcome studies. So let's with those, that kind of general overview, let's look at the specific survey that we did. And so this survey looked at the whole range of services that we just described. We received responses from 28 of the 53 agencies in the state. And as you might guess, and this would probably be true with any topic that we were doing a survey on, there's really a range of responses from the counties and a range of family support services. And what we found is I just mentioned, provision of education, some connections to services, and access to mobile crisis teams, and connection to community-based organizations were the most frequently reported services, and that there are areas for opportunity where counties could create additional services, and these would be specific educational offerings through seminars or workshops on very more narrowly gauged topics. For instance, how to de-escalate an individual who's very agitated, or how to communicate better. As you may know from family psychoeducation courses like NAMI's Family to Family, there's a lot of emphasis in those courses in helping families interact with and communicate with family members who have schizophrenia better, and also to communicate with the treatment team better. And there's also this opportunity as well for online support groups and forums. So we'd like to kind of hear more specifically about two counties, Riverside and Alameda, and the very impressive services that they've provided. And I'd like to turn this over to my colleague, Suzanne.
Hi, thank you, Barry. And it's really my pleasure to kick off the interviews that we're going to now do with two counties. I'd like to start with looking on the next slide. Yes, we're going to start with interviewing Shannon McCleary Hooper, who is the Deputy Director of Peer Support Services for Riverside University Health Systems in the behavioral health area. So I will say, by way of introduction, that Deputy Director McCleary Hooper is a long-standing peer support leader in Riverside County. And based on her oversight of the peer program, peers in the system are providing very consistently high-quality services in all behavioral health programs. They adhere to evidence-based practices related to peer support. And as a peer herself, Shannon oversees all aspects of the services provided. So Shannon, I don't know if you have anything to add, but what an opportunity and pleasure it is to interview you. And I'm hoping that you could start by giving us a high-level overview of the programs and services available for families in Riverside County.
Okay. Hi. Thanks. Thanks, Suzanne. Riverside County has a very robust peer support program. We're probably the largest peer-run organization within a public behavioral health system in the state. And our family advocate group is among several groups of peer driven work that we do here in Riverside. We have about 50, at the last count, I think it was 54 family advocates that work in our system. And yeah, we have an 800 line, and we have an email that's designated for families. We provide specialization training that's very specific for families and caregivers. So yeah, we have a pretty large and active family advocate department here in Riverside County.
Okay, so Shannon, very impressive services provided over there. I can tell what a consistent and deep effort you've made. So please offer some advice for other counties. What are some of the challenges and solutions that you have found providing this kind of support, particularly this family level support in Riverside County?
I think one of the things we've learned is that family supporters need training too. They receive training from NAMI, family to family. That's kind of how they come to us, right? Because they become engaged with the advocacy of, their family and with their loved one. I think, though, that the training itself, if you don't have a philosophy around how your agency is going to create a culture for supporting families, then you kind of are flying blind, and families will often lean on commiseration. Like, people commiserate as opposed to heal. And so commiseration is great in the moment because it makes you feel like you belong. You're connecting with this person. But where's the healing in that? And I think that if you have a recovery model foundation and you have families learning what that actually means for them, not just for the person that they're caregiving and not for the person who's being served in the system during a crisis, or whether it's in care court or anything else, you got to allow your family advocates to learn alongside other peers and everybody have that sort of same message, and you're operating off of the same Medi-Cal code of ethics. You're getting trained in the actual foundational principles of peer support, the SAMHSA guidelines for peer support, because it's families supporting families. And I think that when you do that, you create overall, the family is learning how to recover as a unit, not just the person who's, struggling, because the family's struggling too. And they need to know how to set their own boundaries, how to take time to be mindful and understand how they're working through what their family is being impacted by. And I think it creates a much more healing process for the family.
I love this frame of really inviting people to open up their understanding of who's on the healthcare team, right?
Yeah.
And to really look at where are the natural supports and how do we also attend to them so that just like the rest of us, they don't get burned out, they don't feel frustrated, they don't pull back, but that they're fully engaged there. And that takes a lot of training, a lot of everybody being on the same page and sharing that strategic philosophy.
Sure. And another thing, another boundary or barrier that we ran into was clinical staff not even knowing that this service was available, because we get new people all the time. We have we have interns and folks that come and go, and they don't know that this is here. So you've got to be very intentional about how you present that information. Are you talking about it in staff meetings? Are you posting your 800 number online? Are you creating flyers? Are you advertising that this service is actually available? Because when somebody new in our system finds out about it, they go, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that we could give support to these families." And I think that that's got to be something that's very intentional, because we did learn that, if you don't blow the whistle, nobody's going to hear it,
Right. I mean, it really is like, it doesn't always happen. If you build it, they will come, right? Sometimes you have to build it and tell everybody, hey, come on over. We've got some amazing things happening in order to get people engaged and get them aware of what you're describing. I wonder if, in addition to reflecting on the challenges, if you could also reflect on some of the best practices. And I'm going to sneak a challenge into this.
Okay.
A challenge that we hear all over the country, I'm sure you're experiencing it too, is this workforce, both recruitment and retention. And you've got 50, 60 family advocates clearly you're doing something right. So can you tell us in also about, in addition to other best practices, can you at least address how do you make that happen? How do you have so many folks? How do you retain those folks? What are some of your best practices in that area, as well as any others that you might want to highlight?
Well, when we recognize a family member who's really actively working to advocate for their loved one, we see that as an opportunity to talk to them about maybe perhaps being part of this workforce and get them involved in terms of we have family support groups that are done online and in person, Spanish, English. We have educational courses where folks get engaged in a conversation. We have, meet the DA, meet the psychiatrist, meet the pharmacist. We have these presentations, these education opportunities for families, and a lot of times it will bring out a whole lot of conversation about how do I get involved? How do I become part of this? And we have no problem letting somebody know that there's a job opening for a family advocate in a program. Subject matter experts who help family members understand, things like, what does psychosis really mean? What does that mean for me as a family member? How does the DA actually determine what kind of collaborative court my loved one can participate in? What is it about medications why are there 6 of them as opposed to just one? And why do they have to take them this time of day, or, whatever? This information is what people become super engaged with. And in that process the fire kind of lights up and they think, you know what, I think I could help other families now that I know this stuff. Yeah.
Almost like on the job training.
Well, yeah.
Not really,
Well,
but
they're
you
not
get
on the
to
job
see
yet,
it and
right?
validate it as a specialty. You
And
know a lot, you've learned a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love also, and I just want to highlight it, it sounds like you have regular education that you're providing and that you highlight a lot of the resources in the community.
Oh,
The
yeah.
pharmacist, the PCP. It sounds like that's a real forum. Probably a really good best practice, right?
Yes. Yes. I think that's been kind of, we just had Meet the DA. It happened last week or a little over a week ago.
That's
90
amazing.
participants. We needed an interpreter because we had more than, I think there was like 10 family members that, were Spanish speaking. So we had an interpreter, and we had, the deaf and hard of hearing community came too. We had another interpreter. So these are things where, you're meeting people where they are in terms of how they can grasp the information and getting it from a person of authority.
Yeah.
It's really kind of important to families that they are engaged in a way where they see that that's an expert in front of them, and I'm not getting just some kind of line from someone. They're actually telling me the technical process of what is happening with my loved one, and it's really very valuable.
I mean, I think that's unbelievably valuable to get FaceTime with a DA. I mean, that's remarkable.
Got a great relationship with our DA, and it goes a long way back. My sister-in-law used to be the DA. There's somebody else now, so it was easy.
Yeah. That's remarkable that you can bring that in. Okay, I know we have another county that we're going to talk to, but I'm going to ask you one more question if we have time. And that question really is, tell us a little bit, because this is a pain point for so many folks. How do you recommend addressing some frustration that family members have around the additional information, like when there's no release of information?
Okay.
And you still want family members to feel meaningfully engaged, to help them with that frustration. How do you describe that and talk about that with families?
Well, I will tell you that we have training that is about having a meaningful conversation without an ROI. You have to be able to create a space where you understand that there's a limit to what you're allowed to say, and to ask open-ended questions to the family member about how they're doing and how they're coping and what they're learning, and then know that they have a source of support here, but they're also encouraged to create natural supports in their lives that focus on the world around them, as opposed to right here at the clinic or right here at the hospital or whatever program that person is attached to. family advocates often are the families lean on them for good reason because they didn't know much. But the more they learn, the more they understand that their self-care is important and their ability to expand on their current knowledge is paramount for their own healing process. It all just ties together.
So I'm just, going to reflect back the themes I'm hearing. A huge best practice is don't just build it. Make sure you invite everybody to come, right?
Yeah.
Make sure everybody knows this is a service that's available. The other thing is pay attention to where people are struggling and create a whole forum or a whole setup where people can learn from you. You're paying attention to where are the pain points. Let's meet the DA. Let's meet a primary care provider. Let's, learn more about, how to have a conversation without an ROI. Let's learn more about the value of self-care. And within those conversations, as you start to see who are the folks that are really engaged here and could help others, you are starting to approach them and kind of get them into the idea that they could also really be validated by getting paid. In fact,
You'd be
to do
really good at this.
excellent.
We'll say that. You'd be really
Yeah.
good at what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of the center of peer support as it is across the board. You
love that.
identify the person's strengths and say, look, you could use these strengths to your advantage.
Yeah.
Because you've been through the ringer. Guess
Yeah.
what? You're on the other side of the ringer, and you can actually start helping somebody through the other
Yeah.
side of that to get right where you're at.
That's really great. Shannon, thank you so much. You have done so much work in this area of value, and it's such a honor, really, and privilege to have the opportunity to hear directly from you about it. So
Thank you.
for
Thanks
this
very much.
opportunity.
I'm humbled. Thank you.
I'm going to turn this over to Barry now, who's going to continue with this process, and we're going to hear from another county.
Thank you, Suzanne, and I'm happy to introduce our two guests from the Alameda County program. We have Rashonda Lee Hackett, and Rashonda's told us we should call her Shawnee. She's the interim manager of the Office of Family Empowerment at Alameda County Behavioral Health Department, and she's also leads the Peer Support Workforce Program. And Renee is a program specialist for the adult and older adult system of care at Alameda Behavioral Health Department, and she focuses on wellness centers, benefits advocacy, and in-home outreach teams, or better known as IHOT teams, which she'll be talking with us a little bit about. So welcome, Shawnee and Renee. Why don't we start off with some of the same questions that we heard Suzanne ask Shannon. So, and I'm going to ask Shawnee, maybe you would answer this question first. Could you talk a little bit about what services are currently available for families in Alameda County?
I'm actually going to punt that to Renee.
Okay.
I think because Renee's program is responsible for the bulk of the work with the adults and older adults in Alameda County who will be largely impacted by the care courts. And so I'm going to punt that piece to Renee, and I'll talk a little bit later about some of the community partners in which we utilize to execute programs and services.
Thank you, Shawnee. Currently, Alameda County has 4 in-home outreach teams, as Barry mentioned, more commonly known as IHOT, who provide really intensive community outreach and engagement for resistant or reluctant individuals out in the community and attempt to connect them to services. Those referrals to our IHOT teams can come from anyone in the community. The majority of the referrals we receive currently come from family members or friends, neighbors, community individuals, police departments, EMTs, those kind of individuals out in our communities who come into contact with people every day who may need help and who are reluctant to reach out for that help on their own. Our IHOT teams consist of a clinical supervisor, a peer specialist, a family advocate, and really can do most of their work out in the community, trying to locate the individual, build rapport with them, build that trust, and try to engage them and connect them to the services that they want and desperately need.
I love this very proactive approach to engaging potential participants in the CARE Act process by sending your folks out into the community and as you say, building trust. Are all the same services used for engaging family members who also may be reluctant to use family supports?
Absolutely. The family advocate on the IHOT teams plays a critical piece in these referrals, providing that support to the family member or even just the friend who did the referral, initiated the referral to begin with. They provide support to that person through the entire process of trying to engage the individual to either mental health services, substance use services, and then whatever resources are available to the family member as well.
Terrific, Renee. Shawnee, anything you'd like to add?
So we partner, with our organizations in the community, the Family Resource Network. We will be partnering with our courts, self-help centers in order to forge forward this idea of this the care court and the family supports. We also have in Alameda County the Office of Peer Support Services. This is a sibling program in the Health Equity Division, and there inside that program is housed our peers, our pool of, what is the name now? I do apologize. It is peers. POCC is the acronym for them, and they are an advocacy group that lives in the Office of Peer Support Services, and they are about 1,500 or 1,600 members strong. And this group advocates for the needs and services for themselves, and the Office of Family Empowerment works closely with them so that we understand what their needs are as we work to build the supports and structures for family members. And with the family member supports, we are using our community programs to we'll fund it. We may even come up with the ideas, but we can't execute it without our community partners. And so we utilize the community partner organizations to bring these supports to life. The Family Resource Networks helps to educate and bring about understanding. They are sometimes with us in getting family members to the front lines to advocate for the legislature that is needed. They are a huge voice to help us get information and pilot things in the community. And we also have the Mental Health Association of Alameda County that we work very closely with in terms of family members, family member voices, and supporting what is needed and getting the information. We just brought in our family partner, our peer program specialist for adult and older adult, who will be working with Renee's program to understand what the system believes that it needs, but also what the community believe that they need. We'll be hosting some focus groups to bring folks in we'll be using our community partners. We want to know what's needed. Because we know what we have in place. We know what we want, but we need to better understand what family members need. And so we use our community partners to get that information. And then we try to bring to life things that will remove or reduce those gaps. In terms of care court, we know this will be a huge piece in order for us to be able to actualize things in a way that are going to feel very real and not just lip service.
Shawnee, I love the 2 points that you just made, that you are really seeing what people within the system think is needed to support families, but maybe even more importantly, through your family resource network, you have people in the community who are helping forming your program development and who are helping make connections with family members who may be reluctant or fearful of becoming involved. And it sounds like that family input from the community really drives your program forward.
It does. And I think it's very important to think about it that way. In Alameda County, the folks who will be most greatly impacted by care court are those who are much more highly marginalized. And there is a saying with the POCC that nothing for us without us. And I think we use that along with trauma-informed approaches to really leverage the voices of the people. the system knows what it needs, but sometimes those things may not match. And so we look for those gaps, and we use the people and their voices to determine what those gaps are and
Right.
how to fill them.
That's great. So, I was about to ask you about best practices, but you just actually gave some best practices using the trauma-informed approach, really remaining close to the community sentiment, community input in your program development. So let's just talk about what some of the challenges have been. I mean, it sounds like you've developed lots of nuanced programming, but let's actually start with Renee. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered with the program, and maybe a word or two about how you've overcome them?
I think some of the challenges with at least our current IHOT teams is really understanding the referring party, typically a family member, and what their challenges are around the care that the individual needs, or that the family member believes the individual needs, and how much their involvement can help, but also assisting that family member with knowing healthy boundaries and getting the support for themselves that they might need during that process. I think our teams do an amazing job with working with family member and the individual, both together and separately as needed and as appropriate. But really building on the relationship of both and knowing the importance of what each one plays in the treatment for the individual who needs that help.
Right, Renee. What I'm hearing from both you and Shawnee is remaining very close to the community, to the family members, how they're perceiving the situation, what needs they're identifying, and really trying to join them around their perceptions and their needs. Shawnee, if you had to choose one challenge and one, what would you say has come up for you?
I think one of the biggest challenges that have been voiced by families is being sort of blocked out of the process once systems are involved. And the family members, feel that their voices are then set aside as non-essential, not important. They're not whole. Information is not shared with them. And because of that, and it's rooted in this idea that they've been there, they've been the ones, and sometimes actually the recipients of the issues that are happening. Some family members have been injured or hurt or harmed, but nonetheless, they are the primary presence in that person's life. And once systems become involved, they are no longer seen as a priority or important in the system. And then when the person is returned back out into the community, it's now back in the family's lap, but the information is not being received by the family. It's not being given to the family. They want to receive it. They're not receiving it, though, in a way that feels very helpful to them. But what the adult and older adult, Renee's Assist program, or part of the system, is trying to do is reduce that. Help with understanding, help with increasing meaningful relationships with their IHOT team, and those individuals have gone through this before, helps to reduce that anxiety and fear that families have about their loved ones entering into a system that won't allow them to be a part of the care. Their system, what Renee and her team are doing, is reducing that fear and anxiety that families have.
Shawnee, what you just described is what we probably every county in the country faces, where family members feel that because of the mental health laws around confidentiality, that they don't receive the information that they really desire. But as you're pointing out, by building those trusting relationships, they don't wind up feeling marginalized. They don't wind up feeling in some ways taken advantage of, that they're going to do the work but not have the information. And so I think the structure that you have in place, the IHOT teams and the family peers, really, I think, makes a big difference in helping overcome what is an inherent informational barrier, depending on whether the participant wants the family to have information or not.
Maybe a first step in overcoming. I don't think we're at the place of overcoming. We're on the steps to the porch.
Well, and we'll continue gradually getting up onto that porch one day.
Right.
I think we should probably talk a little bit about how do we apply all the programming that Riverside and Alameda has created. how will this be applied to the introduction, implementation of the CARE Act and the CARE Court? And let's start first with Alameda, and then I'll turn it back to Suzanne and Shannon. So how are you going to take the supports you have and either expand upon them or change them for this new program that's coming online?
I think for starters, having the plan to have 2 IHOT teams as part of the care process. So we are going to have 2 IHOT teams dedicated specifically to care, which I think will be wonderful to have those teams go out at the beginning of the process and do the same type of work that our 4 IHOT teams are currently doing, which is building that rapport and building that trust with the individual and with the family member, and work closely with all of them as part of the CARE Act process. So I think that will be huge. And also we are already starting a lot of planning around targeted trainings for the community, as well as helping our self-help centers that will be doing the petitions for Care Court. So we're working on that as we speak, since this is gonna be live before we know it in December. And really have those targeted trainings focus on making sure families understand the CARE Act process and also manage their expectations around their roles and opportunities within that process.
Right. So if you think about the buckets we talked about before, you're providing education about what the CARE Act is, what the CARE Act process is. You're going to increase the support services and navigation services that you have to help people avail themselves of this new program as best they can and feel involved in the program. So that sounds great.
Absolutely.
Shawnee, anything you'd like to add?
And the Office of Family Empowerment will be supporting all of these efforts that our system is doing by working closely with our community partners and ensuring that the community understands and knows how to actually get to the resources and information that Renee just spoke of, and that those things, and making sure they know that they're available. So we'll be supporting it sort of on the outer lines by making sure that people know how to get there. We are also informing, as all of this planning to implement is happening right now. Our office is informing and being sort of consultants and advocates to the process, encouraging language supports, making sure that the view of the family member is not lost in all of the planning and structure of getting it implemented and up and running. So we will be making sure that the community is aware and the community knows where to go and how to access the information.
Great. Looking forward to seeing how this all gets implemented. Thank you so much, Shawnee and Renee. Let me turn this over to Suzanne and Shannon again.
So we have a peer team that's attached to our CARE Act programs. We were one of the first to sort of implement the CARE Act here in Riverside County, so we're already actively doing that. I know that we have, I was actually hoping we could post the CARE Act resource guide for families on our website, because we have a family advocacy page on our RUHS behavioral health website that provides all kinds of resources. But this particular piece is really important because somebody could read it right off the website and not have to go somewhere to get it. That's the first thing. Second thing is, in our system, we have an infrastructure in place for our peers that includes senior level peer staff. So we have senior family advocates. We have a family advocate program manager who really sends the messages out in a way that's very intentional, again, where they go to staff meetings, they go to community meetings, they go to our cultural competency task force meetings. We have all kinds of community connection that allows us to share that information from leadership staff that can help that. And then the leadership staff also mentor at the clinic level with line staff family advocates to help them and give them a little in-service about how to present this information at their staff meetings on the ground. So I could see this growing exponentially, but I also think, again, it's a marketing thing. Marketing to all of your communities. If you're not marketing with regard to, posters, flyers, we use Instagram and Facebook and other social media platforms, and we post to the website. So once this thing is available online, we're going to have a way for people to see it and see it repeatedly. because the folks are already out there doing the work.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I think at this point I do turn over back to Patricia, who will be bringing this to a close. But that was such a great conversation. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, county participants, and also Barry and Suzanne for talking about ways that we can identify county level strategies and supports to support families, and then also considering some ways in which the current programming to support families can be transitioned or adapted for care. Let's take a look at some next steps. We have different recordings of trainings and resources available for both county BH as they consider how to integrate these programs, and also for families to better understand their roles. So please go to our website and identify what could be helpful. Also, if you're not already, join our communication listserv so that you can continue to receive updates. And then, as Barry mentioned, we did poll different counties across the state on services they're providing for family members, not specific to care, but just across their family programming. If you're a county BH agency and you're interested in learning more about what those services are and being connected to other counties, please reach out to us at that email address, and we can connect you with the right information. And there is no wrong door. If you're curious about help or support, please visit our website like we mentioned. But if you're wanting help and looking for specific information, please feel free to email us at info@careact.org. And again, we'll do our best to connect you with the right information. Thanks again to our presenters and panelists today, and let us know if you have any questions.